The first thing Lyra Ashwood felt was warmth. That made no sense. She was lying beneath a mountain of snow where no living wolf had ever survived a winter night. Her hands had gone numb. Her heartbeat was fading. She had already whispered goodbye to the moon goddess. So, why was she still alive? With trembling eyes, she looked up. She wasn't alone. Curled tightly around her frozen body was the largest black wolf she had ever seen. His thick fur shielded her from the blizzard. His slow breathing kept the deadly cold away. One scar crossed his shoulder. His amber eyes never left the darkness surrounding them. He was not watching her. He was watching for someone else. Only hours earlier, that same girl had stood beneath the sacred moon stone, believing destiny had finally smiled upon her. Instead, her mate rejected her before hundreds of wolves. He called her weak. He called her cursed. Then he stripped away her packmark and ordered her beyond the frozen boundary. No family followed. No friend protested. Even the wolves she had spent years healing lowered their eyes as she walked into the storm alone. She should have died before sunset. Instead, something impossible found her first. The giant wolf suddenly stood. Every muscle in his body became tense. His ears lifted toward the mountain ridge. Then a low growl escaped his throat. Not fear. Warning. A heartbeat later, dozens of hungry wolves emerged from the blizzard. Their glowing eyes surrounded Lyra from every direction. The starving pack moved closer. None of them looked at the dying girl. Every one of them stared at the black wolf. Then something unbelievable happened. The predators slowly lowered their heads. Not in surrender. In respect. As if they recognized a king. Before Lyra could understand what she was seeing, a hunting horn echoed across the mountains. Torches appeared through the snow. Armed riders were coming. And the moment the black wolf heard them, he looked at Lyra with a sadness so deep it almost felt like a farewell. Because the soldiers were not searching for a wounded Omega. They were searching for him. And if they found the girl beside him, she would uncover a secret that powerful wolves had spent 20 years killing to protect. The snow was already beginning to cover Lyra Ashwood when the first wolf finally noticed she was still breathing. Tiny white flakes settled across her pale face as if winter itself had decided to bury her before death could finish its work. Her fingers were frozen against the endless field of ice. Her lips had turned blue. Every breath came slower than the last. The mountains around her stood silent beneath the storm. No one should have survived this place. No one ever had. Yet somewhere beyond the howling wind, a deep growl rolled through the darkness. It was not the cry of a hungry predator. It sounded like a warning meant for the entire world. And before Lyra slipped completely into unconsciousness, she saw two glowing amber eyes watching her through the swirling snow. Only a few hours earlier, she had believed this would become the happiest day of her life. The Frostfawn pack had gathered beneath the ancient moonstone where every destined mating ceremony had been performed for centuries. Torches lined the frozen clearing while snow drifted gently from the dark sky. Hundreds of wolves stood shoulder to shoulder dressed in their finest winter cloaks. Children laughed as they chased one another across the edges of the gathering. Musicians played soft melodies that echoed between the snow-covered pines. Everything looked beautiful. Everything felt sacred. Lyra stood near the center of the ceremony with trembling hands hidden beneath her gray cloak. Her long silver blonde hair rested against her shoulders, and her icy blue eyes searched the crowd for only one face. Her heartbeat refused to slow. Every breath carried hope. She had dreamed about this moment since she was a little girl. Every Omega dreamed that one day the moon goddess would reveal the mate destined to walk beside them forever. Today was that day. Her mother had braided her hair before sunrise with shaking hands and proud tears in her eyes. Her father had smiled for the first time in weeks as he adjusted the small silver pendant around her neck. Even though their family possessed little wealth, they had spent months preparing for the ceremony. Lyra believed the future waiting beyond this night would finally bring happiness to all of them. Then Alpha Rowan Blackclaw stepped forward. He was everything the kingdom admired. Tall, powerful, broad-shouldered. His black cloak flowed behind him while the silver crest of Frostfawn rested proudly across his chest. Every wolf lowered their head in respect as he approached the moonstone. His presence alone commanded silence. Lyra felt the bond inside her soul awaken. Her wolf stirred with joy. She knew. Before anyone spoke a single word, she knew the moon goddess had chosen him. Tears gathered in her eyes as warmth spread through her chest. She smiled without realizing it. Every lonely year of her life suddenly felt worthwhile. Rowan stopped only a few steps away. Their eyes met. For one heartbeat the entire world disappeared. Then everything shattered. Rowan looked at her with cold eyes empty of kindness. His voice cut through the silent clearing like the blade of an executioner. "I reject Lyra Ashwood as my mate." The words echoed across the frozen valley. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Lyra stared at him, unable to understand what she had just heard. The bond inside her chest twisted violently. Pain exploded through every part of her body. She dropped to one knee as though invisible claws had ripped through her soul. The crowd began whispering. Some looked shocked. Others looked relieved. Then Rowan spoke again. "She is weak. She carries cursed blood. She is unworthy of standing beside an alpha." Every sentence struck harder than the last. Lyra lifted trembling eyes toward him. "Rowan, please." Her voice barely escaped her lips. "Please tell me this is not real." For just a moment something flickered inside Rowan's eyes. Doubt, regret, confusion, but it vanished almost instantly. He turned away. The moon goddess made a mistake. "You will never become my Luna." Gasps spread through the crowd. Lyra felt something inside her break forever. The bond snapped. A scream escaped her before she could stop it. Not from her throat, from her soul. Even the wolves standing far from the ceremony felt the sound deep inside their hearts. Her wolf collapsed into silence. She could no longer feel her. The sacred connection had been destroyed. An elderly woman lowered her eyes in pity. Several warriors looked away, unable to watch. Others laughed quietly among themselves. An Omega rejected before the entire kingdom would never recover her honor. Lyra searched desperately for her parents. Her mother stood frozen with tears streaming down her face. Her father refused to meet her eyes. Before she could reach them, several elders stepped forward. The High Elder removed the Frostfang pendant from around Lyra's neck. His voice carried no sympathy. "The rejected have no place beneath this pack." Another elder ripped the ceremonial ribbon from her cloak. A third wiped away the blessing mark that had been painted across her forehead only moments earlier. Every symbol of belonging disappeared one after another. It felt as though she had never existed. Selena Thorne stepped gracefully toward Rowan with a smile that barely concealed her satisfaction. "Poor Lyra," she said softly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Perhaps the moon goddess simply pitied you." A few wolves laughed. Lyra looked toward her parents, once more hoping they would defend her. Instead, her father lowered his head. "Do not follow us." The words hurt even more than Rowan's rejection. Her mother cried, quietly, but never took a single step forward. Fear had stolen even a mother's courage. The crowd slowly parted, creating a lonely path leading away from the moonstone. No one offered comfort. No one reached for her hand. The celebration resumed behind her as though nothing important had happened. Music returned. Laughter returned. Only Lyra's world had ended. She walked through the falling snow without knowing where her feet carried her. Every step felt heavier than the last. The bond ache inside her chest refused to fade. She wanted to cry, but no tears remained. Beyond the village gates stood the frozen boundary. Every child knew the stories. No wolf survived beyond those mountains during winter. The storm swallowed every traveler. The beasts hunted anything that moved. It was a place where hope itself froze. 2 guards opened the ancient wooden gate. Neither looked at her. One pointed silently toward the endless white wilderness. Without another word, the gates closed behind her. The sound echoed through the empty valley like the final chapter of her old life slamming shut. The wind became stronger. Snow covered her footprints almost immediately. She wrapped her torn gray cloak tightly around herself and kept walking into the endless storm because there was nowhere left to return. Behind her, hidden among the snow-covered pine trees, stood an enormous black wolf. His thick fur blended with the darkness. A long scar crossed his left shoulder. His amber eyes never left Lyra for even a single heartbeat. When the village disappeared beneath the storm, the giant wolf finally stepped from the shadows and silently began following the broken Omega into the frozen wilderness. Neither of them knew that before the next sunrise the fate of every royal bloodline in the werewolf kingdoms would begin to change forever. The storm grew crueler with every passing step. Snow rose from the ground like white smoke and wrapped itself around Lyra until the mountains disappeared from sight. The cold no longer stung her skin. It had become something deeper, something that reached into her bones and slowly stole every bit of strength she had left. Her boots sank into the untouched snow. Each step demanded more than the one before it. She tried to remember the warmth of her family home, but the memory slipped away like melting ice. Even the faces of her parents had begun to blur behind the pain of their silence. She stopped beside a frozen pine tree and leaned against its rough trunk. Her hands shook so badly that she could barely pull her torn cloak tighter around her shoulders. A quiet sob escaped her lips before she covered her mouth. She had spent years healing injured wolves. She had comforted frightened children during harsh winters. She had never refused anyone who needed help. Yet when she needed one kind hand, the entire world had turned its back on her. The wind answered with another icy howl. Lyra lifted her face toward the dark sky. "If this is where my story ends, then let it end quickly," she whispered. No answer came. Only silence. She forced herself forward again. Far behind her, the giant black wolf continued moving through the blizzard without making a sound. His enormous paws barely disturbed the snow. His amber eyes never left the fragile figure struggling ahead of him. Every few moments, he lifted his scarred head toward the mountains as if listening for something hidden beneath the storm. He was not following her by accident. He was guarding her. Unknown to Lyra, several sets of fresh tracks had already appeared farther up the mountain. Someone else was hunting. The daylight faded long before evening arrived. Thick clouds swallowed the last hint of sunlight until the world became nothing more than shifting shades of gray and white. Lyra could no longer tell where the path ended and the frozen cliffs began. Her breathing grew slower. Her vision blurred. Once she stumbled and barely caught herself. The second time she fell to both knees. The third time she could not stand again. She looked at her trembling hands buried in the snow. They no longer felt like her own. A strange peace settled over her. Perhaps this was how death arrived. Not with fear, not with pain, only with endless quiet. She closed her eyes. A deep growl rolled across the frozen valley. Her eyes opened instantly. The sound was closer now. Heavy footsteps circled somewhere beyond the curtain of snow. Another growl answered from the darkness. Then another. A pack. Lyra struggled to sit upright as several lean mountain wolves emerged from the blizzard. Their ribs showed beneath thick gray fur. Hunger burned inside their pale eyes. Winter had left them desperate. The lead wolf stepped forward slowly. Its lips curled back. Sharp teeth flashed. Lyra knew she had no strength left to run. She simply closed her eyes once more. The attack never came. A roar exploded through the valley. Not the howl of an ordinary wolf. This sound carried command, power, authority. The snow itself seemed to tremble. The hungry wolves froze. Every head turned toward the darkness. Then he appeared. The giant black wolf stepped between Lyra and the starving pack. He looked larger than before. His thick black fur was dusted with fresh snow, while the long scar across his shoulder stood out against his dark coat. His amber eyes never blinked. The lead wolf lowered itself instantly. One by one, every predator backed away. Not because they feared death, because they recognized something far greater. A king. Within seconds they disappeared into the storm without daring to challenge him. The black wolf remained standing. His powerful body shielded Lyra from the freezing wind. She stared at him through half-closed eyes. "Why are you helping me?" she whispered. The wolf said nothing. He simply lowered himself onto the snow beside her. Slowly he pressed the warmth of his massive body against hers. At first Lyra hesitated. Then the unbearable cold forced her closer. His thick fur trapped the last remaining warmth around her frozen body. For the first time since leaving Frostfang, she stopped shaking. She rested one trembling hand against his neck. His heartbeat was calm, strong, steady. Tears filled her eyes again. "Everyone else abandoned me," she whispered. "You do not even know my name." The black wolf closed his eyes for a single moment, as if he understood every word. Night covered the mountains completely. The blizzard became even stronger. Snow buried the two silent figures until they looked like part of the frozen landscape itself. Hours passed. Several times the wolf suddenly lifted his head and stared into the darkness. Each time his ears flattened. Each time a low warning growl escaped his throat. Someone was nearby, watching, waiting. Just before dawn, the scent finally reached him. Humans. Not ordinary hunters. Assassins. Hidden beneath white cloaks, they moved carefully between the trees, carrying silver-tipped weapons designed to kill powerful wolves. The black wolf slowly stood. His muscles tightened. His eyes burned with quiet fury. He looked once toward the sleeping Lyra, then disappeared soundlessly into the storm. Moments later, the mountains exploded with furious snarls. Steel clashed against claws. Men screamed. The sound echoed through the valley before falling silent almost as quickly as it had begun. Lyra stirred but never fully woke. When the first pale light of morning finally reached the mountains, she slowly opened her eyes. The storm had passed. The sky glowed with soft shades of silver and blue. She reached beside her. The black wolf was gone. For one painful heartbeat, she wondered if she had imagined him. Then she noticed the enormous paw prints leading away through the snow. Beside the place where he had slept, something metallic reflected the morning light. Lyra brushed away the snow with frozen fingers. A beautifully crafted silver crest rested beneath the ice. Its design showed a crowned wolf surrounded by a full moon. She frowned. Every child knew the symbol. The royal moon crest. It had vanished 7 years earlier on the same night the Alpha King disappeared without a trace. No ordinary wolf could possess such a treasure. As she turned the crest over, another discovery stole her breath. Fresh blood stained the snow nearby. Dark crimson drops stretched toward the forest. The blood was not hers. It was far too much. The black wolf had been wounded. Without thinking, Lyra stood despite the pain in her legs. She looked toward the endless line of crimson drops disappearing between the snow-covered pines. Every instinct told her to walk away, to save herself. Instead, she tightened her torn cloak around her shoulders and clutched the royal crest against her chest. For the first time since her rejection, she had a reason to keep moving. Somewhere beyond those silent trees, the mysterious black wolf who had saved her life was bleeding alone. She took one determined step into the forest. She had no idea that before the sun reached its highest point, she would uncover a hidden cabin that had been waiting for her arrival for more than 20 years. Lyra followed the trail of blood through the silent forest without allowing herself to think about the danger waiting ahead. Every crimson drop against the white snow reminded her that the giant black wolf had risked his life for someone he had never met. The wind had calmed after the night storm, and sunlight filtered through the towering pine trees. Their branches carried thick blankets of snow that sparkled like tiny stars whenever the breeze touched them. It was beautiful, yet strangely lonely. Every step deeper into the forest carried her farther away from the life she had lost and closer to a future she could not imagine. The blood trail grew thinner. Whoever had been wounded was still moving. Lyra quickened her pace despite the ache in her legs. She ignored the burning in her lungs and pushed through dense bushes covered with frost. Suddenly she stopped. Fresh footprints. Not wolf tracks. Human footprints. At least 4 people had crossed the path only a short while earlier. She knelt beside the prints and gently touched the edge of one mark. The snow had not frozen again, which meant whoever left them could not be far away. Her heartbeat quickened. The black wolf was not the only one being hunted. Someone else had followed him. A loud crack echoed somewhere ahead. Lyra quickly hid behind the thick trunk of an ancient pine tree. Voices drifted through the forest. Find the beast before sunset. The order came from a rough voice, filled with impatience. Another man answered. The reward is worth more than an entire village. The council wants proof that he is dead this time. Lyra held her breath. The council. She remembered hearing those words only a few times during childhood. The royal council ruled over every major pack from the shadows. Even powerful alphas respected their commands. Why would they send killers after one wolf? She carefully looked around the tree. 4 men dressed in white winter cloaks searched the forest carrying long silver spears and crossbows tipped with polished silver bolts. Their faces were hidden beneath thick hoods. One hunter suddenly stopped walking. He looked directly toward her hiding place. Lyra pressed herself against the tree. Her pulse thundered inside her ears. Several long moments passed. Then another hunter called his name. The first man turned away. They continued deeper into the forest. Only after their footsteps disappeared did Lyra finally breathe again. She waited another minute before quietly moving in the opposite direction. The blood trail curved toward a rocky hillside where thick vines hung over the entrance to what appeared to be nothing more than an ordinary cliff. Lyra frowned. The blood disappeared. She searched the ground again. Nothing. Then a weak growl echoed from somewhere nearby. She looked up. Behind the frozen vines, she noticed a narrow opening hidden inside the stone wall. Without hesitation, she pushed the branches aside. A narrow passage stretched into darkness. Cold air drifted from within, carrying the scent of burning wood. Someone lived here. Lyra stepped carefully inside. The tunnel widened after several steps and opened into a surprisingly warm cabin built entirely within the mountain itself. A fire burned inside a stone fireplace. Shelves filled with dried herbs covered one wall. Ancient books rested neatly upon carved wooden tables. Animal pelts lay across the floor. The place felt forgotten by the world. Yet someone had cared for it every single day. Her eyes searched the room. No one. Then she heard slow breathing. The giant black wolf lay beside the fireplace. His thick black fur was stained with blood. One silver bolt remained buried deep near his shoulder, just below the old scar. Lyra rushed toward him. The wolf lifted his head weakly. Their eyes met. For the first time, she saw exhaustion inside those amber eyes. "You are alive," she whispered. The wolf tried to stand. Pain forced him back down. Lyra slowly knelt beside him. "Do not move. You protected me. Now let me protect you." The wolf remained still, almost as if he trusted her. Lyra carefully examined the wound. The silver bolt had gone deep, too deep to leave untouched. She gathered clean cloth from a nearby shelf before searching the cabin for healing herbs. To her surprise, every plant she needed was already hanging from the ceiling. Winter root, snow sage, mountain pine resin. Someone had prepared this place for emergencies. She crushed the herbs together using a stone bowl before returning to the wolf. "This will hurt. I am sorry." She wrapped one hand firmly around the bolt. With a deep breath she pulled. The wolf let out a thunderous roar that shook dust from the ceiling. Blood poured across his dark fur. Lyra immediately pressed the herbs against the wound before wrapping it tightly with clean cloth. Slowly the bleeding began to stop. She sat back with relief. "You are stronger than anyone I have ever known." The wolf watched her quietly. Then something unexpected happened. He gently rested his enormous head against her shoulder. Not from weakness, from gratitude. Lyra smiled for the first time since the rejection ceremony. A small, genuine smile. "You really understand me, do not you?" The wolf closed his eyes. Outside the hidden cabin, snow began falling once again. Hours passed peacefully. Lyra explored the cabin while the wolf rested. She found old maps showing forgotten mountain paths, ancient swords covered with dust, strange symbols carved into wooden beams. Most confusing of all was a faded portrait hanging above the fireplace. A tall man dressed in royal armor stood beside a young woman wearing a silver crown. Between them stood a little girl no older than 3. Her silver blonde hair, her pale skin, her blue eyes. Lyra froze. The child looked exactly like her. She slowly reached toward the painting. "How is this possible?" A quiet voice answered behind her. "Because some truths survive even when kingdoms try to bury them." Lyra spun around. An elderly man stood near the entrance, carrying a bundle of firewood. His long white beard rested against his chest. His calm gray eyes studied her with quiet warmth. "You found this place at last," he said softly. Lyra instinctively stepped back. "Who are you?" The old man placed the firewood beside the fireplace before looking toward the resting black wolf. "An old guardian. Nothing more." The wolf opened his eyes and calmly watched the old man. There was no hostility between them, only silent understanding. Lyra looked from one to the other. "You know him." The old man smiled faintly. "Long before either of you knew each other." Confusion filled her face. "None of this makes sense." The old man slowly walked toward the faded portrait. "It does not. Not yet. But it will." He gently touched the picture of the little girl. "There are answers hidden inside these mountains that powerful wolves have murdered to protect. Answers about your family. Answers about the royal bloodline. Answers about why someone wanted you to die before you learned your true name." Lyra felt her heart pound. "My true name." Before she could ask another question, a loud horn echoed across the mountains. The old man's expression changed instantly. His calm disappeared. "They found us." The black wolf rose to his feet, despite the fresh wound. His amber eyes narrowed toward the entrance. Outside, dozens of voices shouted through the forest. Snow crunched beneath countless boots. The hidden cabin had remained a secret for more than 20 years. Now enemies surrounded it from every direction. And among the distant voices, Lyra heard one name that turned her blood cold. Alpha Rowan had come to the mountains himself. The sound of boots crushing fresh snow echoed through the mountains like the steady beat of approaching doom. Lyra stood frozen beside the old portrait while every instinct urged her to run. Outside the hidden cabin, dozens of voices spread across the forest. Men shouted orders from different directions. Steel clanged against armor. Hunting horns rose above the wind again and again until even the birds fled from the trees. Whoever had come was no ordinary search party. They were closing every path through the valley. The old guardian stepped toward the narrow entrance and carefully pulled aside a thick animal hide that covered part of the stone wall. Behind it another passage appeared. It was dark and narrow and almost impossible to notice. His calm voice became firm. This tunnel was built long before any of us were born. It leads through the mountain. If fortune remains with us, we can reach the northern ridge before sunset. Lyra looked toward the giant black wolf. He had already risen despite the fresh wound on his shoulder. Blood had begun soaking through the bandages she had wrapped only hours earlier. Even injured, he looked powerful enough to frighten the mountain itself. "You cannot keep fighting in this condition," she said quietly. The wolf looked into her eyes. There was no fear inside his gaze, only determination, almost as though protecting her mattered more than surviving. The old guardian hurried toward a wooden chest hidden beneath the table. He opened it and removed a rolled map along with a small leather pouch. He handed both to Lyra. "Keep these close. No matter what happens, do not let anyone take them from you." She accepted them without understanding. "What is inside?" "The truth," he answered. "The truth many powerful wolves have spent 20 years trying to erase." Before Lyra could ask another question, a heavy crash shook the cabin. Dust rained from the ceiling. Someone had struck the hidden stone entrance with a massive hammer. Another crash followed. The mountain trembled. A voice thundered from outside. "We know someone is hiding inside. Come out and you may live." The old guardian closed his eyes for one brief moment. Then he smiled sadly. They never intended to spare anyone. The black wolf released a deep growl that filled the cabin with raw power. His ears flattened. His muscles tightened. He was ready. Another violent blow shattered part of the stone wall. Cold air rushed into the cabin, carrying fresh snow with it. The old guardian pointed toward the secret tunnel. "Go now." Lyra hesitated. "What about you?" "Someone must delay them." His answer came without fear. She shook her head. "No, I cannot leave you." The old man gently rested one hand against her shoulder. "Child, some lives are protected by running. Others are protected by staying behind. Today my path ends so yours may begin." Tears filled Lyra's eyes. She had known him for only a few hours, yet his kindness felt warmer than everything she had received from her own pack. The black wolf walked beside her and lightly nudged her hand with his nose. He was urging her forward. Another explosion of stone echoed through the cabin. Daylight burst through a widening crack. Armed hunters began climbing inside. The old guardian pulled an ancient sword from the wall. Its silver blade reflected the firelight. His old eyes suddenly looked 20 years younger. "Go." That single word carried the weight of a final goodbye. Lyra swallowed her tears and entered the narrow tunnel beside the black wolf. Behind them, the old guardian stepped forward alone. The first hunter lunged. Steel collided with steel. The battle began. The tunnel twisted through solid rock for what felt like forever. The only sounds were their hurried footsteps and the distant echoes of fighting behind them. Sometimes the passage became so narrow that Lyra had to turn sideways to squeeze through. Sometimes it opened into wide chambers filled with ancient carvings of wolves standing beneath a great moon. She paused beside one carving. The same crowned wolf from the silver crest appeared at its center. Around him knelt dozens of smaller wolves. The black wolf stopped beside her. For several silent moments he stared at the carving. His amber eyes softened. It looked almost like grief. Before Lyra could study him further, another sound reached them. Not from behind. From ahead. Voices. The tunnel had another entrance. Someone had discovered it. The black wolf immediately stepped in front of Lyra. His growl became low and dangerous. 3 armed hunters appeared from the darkness, carrying burning torches. Their eyes widened the moment they saw the enormous black wolf. One man whispered in disbelief, "It really is him." The second hunter quickly raised his crossbow. "Take the beast alive! Kill the girl!" The bolt flew straight toward Lyra. Before she could react, the black wolf threw himself across her path. The silver bolt struck his side. A painful roar shook the tunnel. Lyra screamed. No. The wolf remained standing despite the fresh wound. His eyes turned fierce. He charged. The first hunter barely had time to raise his weapon before powerful jaws sent him crashing against the stone wall. The second dropped his crossbow and reached for his sword. Too late. The wolf slammed into him with terrifying force. The third man turned and ran deeper into the tunnel, shouting for help. The black wolf prepared to chase him. Lyra caught his thick fur. "Please, do not leave me." He stopped immediately. For one quiet heartbeat, they simply looked at each other. She slowly removed the broken bolt from his side. "You keep saving me. How many wounds will you carry because of me?" The wolf gently touched his forehead against hers. Warm, gentle, comforting. Her heart beat faster. She could not explain why. A strange connection had begun growing between them. Not the painful bond she once believed tied her to Rowan. This felt quieter, safer, real. Together they continued through the tunnel until fresh daylight appeared ahead. They emerged high above the valley onto a narrow mountain ledge overlooking endless forests covered in snow. The view stole Lyra's breath. Far below, hundreds of warriors searched every path leading away from the hidden cabin. Smoke rose from the trees. The cabin itself was burning. Lyra stared silently. The old guardian. She already knew. He was gone. The black wolf stood beside her without making a sound. He understood loss, perhaps better than anyone. Suddenly movement caught Lyra's attention. Across the valley a group of riders climbed toward the burning cabin. At their front rode Alpha Rowan Blacklaw. His dark cloak whipped violently in the wind as he stared toward the smoke. His expression was nothing like the cold pride she remembered from the moon ceremony. His face carried worry, regret, and confusion. One of his commanders approached. "Alpha, we searched the village records. There is something you must see." The commander handed Rowan an old parchment. As Rowan opened it, the color slowly drained from his face. His hands began trembling. He whispered something too distant for Lyra to hear. Then he looked toward the burning cabin with horror filling his eyes. For the first time since rejecting Lyra, he appeared to realize that something had gone terribly wrong. High above the valley, Lyra watched the man who had destroyed her life. She felt no satisfaction, only questions, because deep inside she sensed that Rowan had not come to the mountains simply to hunt her. He had come searching for the truth, and somewhere inside the leather pouch hidden beneath her cloak lay the very secret that could destroy an entire kingdom. The wind swept across the mountain ridge with enough force to steal every trace of warmth from the world. Below them, the burning cabin slowly disappeared beneath rising smoke, while warriors searched every frozen trail leading into the northern wilderness. Lyra tightened her cloak around herself and looked one last time toward the place where the old guardian had given his life. Her chest ached with grief. She had entered those mountains believing she had lost everything. Yet in only a single day she had found kindness from strangers and watched one of them die protecting her. She silently promised herself that his sacrifice would never be forgotten. The giant black wolf stood beside her with his head lowered toward the smoke. The cold wind carried the scent of ash and blood. His amber eyes remained fixed on the valley below. There was pain inside them, not the pain of fresh wounds, but the kind that had lived in a heart for many years. Lyra slowly stepped closer. "You knew him for a long time, did you not?" The wolf did not move. His silence answered better than words ever could. She reached up and gently rested her hand against the thick fur along his neck. "Thank you for bringing me to him. If you had not found me that night, I would already be gone." The wolf turned his head toward her. For a brief moment his fierce eyes softened. Then his ears suddenly lifted. He had heard something. Far away. His body became tense. Lyra noticed it immediately. "What is it?" Without warning, the wolf began moving quickly along the narrow ridge. He stopped several steps ahead and looked back as if asking her to follow. She trusted him without hesitation. The path twisted between towering cliffs before descending into a hidden valley unlike anything she had ever seen. The harsh winds disappeared the moment they crossed the rocky pass. Tall evergreen trees surrounded a frozen lake whose surface reflected the pale winter sky like polished glass. Small wooden cottages stood quietly beneath heavy snow. Thin streams of smoke rose from stone chimneys. People lived here, dozens of them. Children ran across the snow laughing while older women gathered firewood near the forest edge. Men repaired fishing nets beside the frozen lake. Nobody carried weapons openly. Nobody looked frightened. It felt peaceful, almost impossible after everything Lyra had endured. As soon as the villagers noticed the Black Wolf, every conversation stopped. Instead of fear, every person bowed respectfully. Even the children lowered their heads. Lyra looked around in confusion. Why would an entire village bow before an ordinary wolf? An elderly woman slowly approached carrying a basket filled with herbs. Deep wrinkles lined her gentle face. When she reached the Black Wolf, she smiled warmly. "You have returned." Her voice carried affection rather than surprise. Then her eyes shifted toward Lyra. "So this is the girl." Lyra blinked. "You know about me." The old woman nodded. "We have been waiting for you longer than you can imagine." Before Lyra could ask another question, the Black Wolf suddenly staggered. His front legs trembled. Fresh blood spread across the white bandages wrapped around his shoulder and side. The wounds from the silver bolts had reopened. He collapsed onto the snow. Several villagers rushed forward. "Quickly! Bring hot water. Prepare the healing room." Lyra knelt beside him. "Stay with me, please." The old woman gently touched Lyra's shoulder. "He has carried too many wounds for too many years. Come, help us save him." Together, they carefully carried the enormous wolf into the largest cottage overlooking the frozen lake. Warm firelight filled the room, while shelves overflowed with dried herbs and old medical tools. Lyra immediately recognized many of the plants. Without waiting for instructions, she began crushing healing leaves and preparing fresh bandages. The old woman watched quietly. "You truly are your mother's daughter." Lyra stopped. "My mother." The woman smiled sadly. "You have her hands. The same gentle touch. The same heart." Confusion flooded Lyra's mind. "You knew my mother." Before the old woman could answer, a violent shiver passed through the wolf's body. His breathing became uneven. The room suddenly filled with an invisible pressure that made every candle flicker. The old woman whispered softly, "It is happening again." Lyra looked at her. "What is happening?" The old woman did not answer. Instead, she motioned for everyone else to leave. Within moments, only she and Lyra remained inside the room. The Black Wolf let out a deep, painful growl. Light seemed to ripple across his dark fur. His body trembled violently. Bones shifted beneath his skin. Lyra stumbled backward in shock. The impossible transformation unfolded before her eyes. The massive wolf slowly disappeared. Dark fur withdrew. Powerful paws became human hands. The great beast that had guarded her through the blizzard was gone. In his place lay an unconscious man. Tall, strong, broad-shouldered. Long black hair spread across the pillow. Several old scars crossed his chest. The newest wounds bled heavily where the silver bolts had struck him. Lyra could not breathe. Her voice barely escaped her lips. "It was you." The old woman quietly covered the unconscious man with a heavy blanket. "Yes." Lyra stared at his peaceful face. Every memory flashed before her. The amber eyes watching her through the snow. The warm body shielding her from death. The silent guardian who had never abandoned her. He had been human all along. "Who is he?" she whispered. The old woman's eyes filled with emotion. "His true name is Caeldraven. 7 years ago, every kingdom believed he died during the Night of Blood. They mourned him. They buried an empty coffin. They crowned new rulers. But Cael survived. He survived because he disappeared before his enemies could finish what they started." Lyra slowly looked back toward the sleeping man. The name sounded strangely familiar. Then she remembered. Her father had once spoken that name in a whisper when she was very young before quickly changing the subject. The old woman continued. "He was not only an alpha. He was the last crowned Alpha King of the Northern Realms." Lyra felt the room spin around her. The Alpha King. The missing ruler every kingdom had searched for. The man believed dead. The wolf who had saved her life. None of it seemed possible. Why would someone so powerful protect me? The old woman stepped toward the fireplace. Because long before you knew his face, he made a promise to someone he could never betray. Lyra frowned. Who? Your father. Silence filled the room. The fire cracked softly. Lyra stared without blinking. My father never met a king. The old woman slowly turned toward her. The man you call father loved you with all his heart, but he was not the man whose blood flows through your veins. Lyra felt as though the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. No, that cannot be true. The old woman opened a carved wooden chest hidden beneath the bed. Inside rested a beautifully wrapped bundle protected by layers of faded cloth. She carefully unfolded it. A tiny silver crown no larger than a child's head rested inside. Beside it lay a worn blanket embroidered with the same royal wolf crest Lyra had found beneath the snow. The old woman looked directly into Lyra's eyes. This blanket carried you into these mountains 20 years ago, the night your real parents were murdered. Before Lyra could speak, another sound echoed through the silent village. A warning bell. One strike, then another, then another. The old woman rushed toward the window. Her face turned pale. Lyra followed her gaze. Hundreds of armored riders had appeared along the frozen lake. At their front rode Selena Thorne. Beside her rode Alpha Rowan Blackclaw, and between them flew a black banner marked with the seal of the Royal Council. The hunt was over. They had found the hidden village. The warning bell echoed across the hidden valley until every voice fell silent. Children stopped playing beside the frozen lake. Mothers hurried them indoors without asking questions. Men who had spent the morning repairing fishing nets quietly disappeared into nearby homes and returned carrying old swords and weathered shields. Fear did not spread through the village. Determination did. It was the quiet courage of people who had spent years preparing for the day their enemies would finally find them. Lyra stood beside the frost-covered window, unable to pull her eyes away from the army gathering beyond the lake. Hundreds of riders formed long black lines against the white snow. Their armor reflected the pale winter sun. Spears rose into the cold sky like a forest of steel. At the center of the formation flew the dark banner of the Royal Council. She had never seen such a force assemble before. This was not an arrest. It was an execution. The old healer quietly closed the wooden shutters before turning toward Lyra. They have not come for this village. They have come for you. Those words settled heavily inside the room. Lyra looked down at her own trembling hands. For me. Why? The old healer stepped closer and gently placed the tiny silver crown into Lyra's hands. Because the greatest threat to those who stole the throne is not an army. It is the rightful heir returning alive. Lyra stared at the small crown resting against her palms. It felt surprisingly warm despite the cold air. This cannot belong to me. The old healer smiled sadly. You have spent your whole life believing you were an unwanted Omega. That was the lie they created. The truth is far more dangerous. Before Lyra could answer, the cottage door opened. 3 elderly men entered wearing heavy gray cloaks embroidered with the same royal wolf crest she had already seen several times. Each carried the dignity of someone who had once commanded respect across the kingdom. The oldest among them bowed deeply before her. Your Highness, the words struck Lyra harder than any blade. Please do not call me that. I am not a queen. I am not even an alpha. I am only Lyra. The old man slowly lifted his head. No. You are Lyra Ashwood because brave people sacrificed everything to protect your true name. Your real name is Lyra Mooncrest, last daughter of King Alaric and Queen Eloan, the final child of the Moon royal bloodline. Silence filled the room. The fire continued burning softly while Lyra struggled to breathe. Images rushed through her mind. The portrait inside the hidden cabin, the little silver crown, the royal crest beneath the snow, the old guardian giving his life. None of it had been coincidence. Someone had been protecting her since childhood. The elder carefully unfolded an old piece of cloth. Inside rested a faded painting. It showed the same royal family she had seen before. This time she noticed something she had missed. Around the neck of the little girl hung the exact silver pendant her adoptive mother had placed around her neck on the morning of the moon ceremony. Tears filled Lyra's eyes. She touched the pendant resting beneath her cloak. My mother never told me. Because she promised your parents she never would. The elder spoke gently. Your adoptive family loved you. They hid the truth, because revealing it would have meant your death. Lyra closed her eyes. For the first time she understood why her father had looked broken when he told her not to follow them. He had not abandoned her because he hated her. He believed the rejection had finally exposed the secret they had protected for 2 decades. He had chosen silence, hoping it might save her life. The realization broke her heart all over again. At that moment a quiet voice came from the bed behind her. Lyra. She turned instantly. Cale had awakened. He slowly pushed himself upright despite the pain in his wounds. His face was pale, yet his amber eyes remained as calm as ever. For the first time she heard his human voice. It was deep, steady, gentle. You should not be standing, she said as she hurried toward him. Your wounds have barely closed. A faint smile touched his lips. You always think of everyone except yourself. Even now. She carefully helped him sit against the wooden headboard. You saved me more than once. I could never leave you alone. Cale looked into her eyes for several long moments. There was warmth inside his gaze that needed no words. Then his expression became serious. How much have they told you? She looked down at the tiny crown still resting in her hands. Enough to know that my entire life has been built on secrets. Cale nodded slowly. Then it is time you hear the rest. Everyone in the room became silent. 20 years ago your parents united the northern kingdoms. They believed wolves should serve the people instead of ruling through fear. Many powerful nobles hated them for it. The royal council feared losing their influence. So they planned a massacre. On one winter night, they murdered nearly every member of the Moon Royal family. I arrived too late. I could save only one child. You. Lyra felt tears slide down her cheeks. You carried me away. Cale nodded. I swore before your dying father that no one would ever find you. I placed you into the arms of the Ashwood family because they were the only people I trusted. I remained hidden, so I could protect you from the shadows until the day you were ready. Lyra struggled to speak. All those years, you watched over me, whenever danger came too close. Yes, her voice became almost a whisper. And the night I was rejected, I knew they would send you beyond the frozen boundary. That was the first place the council would never expect me to appear. Emotion filled the room. Everything suddenly made sense. The Black Wolf had not saved a stranger. He had protected a promise. Outside, another warning bell rang across the village. This time it was followed by the sound of war drums. The army had begun moving. One of the elders hurried toward the window before looking back with concern. They are crossing the lake. They will reach us within the hour. Cale slowly stood despite every protest from the healers. His movements were slower than before, but his presence immediately changed the room. He no longer looked like a wounded survivor. He looked like a king. He turned toward Lyra. You cannot stay here. There is one place the council has never discovered. The Moon Sanctuary. There you will learn everything your bloodline carries. You will become strong enough to reclaim what was stolen. Lyra looked into his eyes. Run again. That is what everyone keeps asking me to do. Cale stepped closer. Not run. Prepare. There is a difference. She remained silent. For several heartbeats, she listened to the distant drums rolling across the frozen valley. Then she slowly lifted her chin. When I was rejected, I ran because I had no choice. When I crossed the mountains, I survived because others protected me. But I cannot spend my whole life hiding behind sacrifices made by better people. Cale watched her carefully. Something had changed inside her. The frightened Omega who had stumbled into the snow no longer stood before him. Her voice grew stronger. Teach me everything they feared I might become. A quiet smile appeared on Cale's face. It was the first genuine smile Lyra had ever seen from him. He reached into his cloak and removed a beautifully crafted sword with a silver wolf engraved along its blade. He offered it to her. Then your first lesson begins today. Lyra wrapped both hands around the sword. The metal felt perfectly balanced, almost as though it had been waiting for her. At that exact moment the cottage door burst open. A young scout stumbled inside, covered in snow and blood. He struggled to catch his breath before speaking. The southern gate has fallen. Selena has entered the village. And Alpha Rowan is demanding that Lyra surrender before sunset. The room fell into complete silence. Outside, the first screams of battle rose into the cold winter sky. The first scream cut through the frozen air like a blade. It came from the southern edge of the hidden village, where the wooden gate had finally given way beneath the weight of the invading army. A moment later, another cry echoed across the valley. Then another. The peaceful refuge that had remained hidden for years disappeared beneath the sound of clashing steel and frightened voices. Smoke began rising between the snow-covered rooftops, while frightened horses charged through the narrow streets. Winter itself seemed to hold its breath as the battle reached the heart of the village. Lyra tightened her grip around the silver sword Cale had placed in her hands. Only days earlier those hands had trembled after being rejected before the entire kingdom. Now they no longer shook. Fear still lived inside her heart, but it no longer controlled her. Every loss she had suffered had become another stone beneath her feet instead of another chain around her soul. Cale stepped beside her. His wounds had not fully healed, yet his presence filled the room with quiet strength. His amber eyes remained calm. They have come expecting to find a frightened girl. Let them discover someone else. Lyra nodded. Together they stepped outside. The cold wind struck her face as snow drifted across the battlefield. Villagers fought desperately to protect one another. Elderly men who had not carried swords in years stood beside young hunters. Women formed long lines carrying wounded children toward underground shelters hidden beneath the cottages. No one begged for mercy. No one surrendered. This village had survived because courage had become part of its blood. A group of armored soldiers suddenly rushed toward them. There she is. Take the girl alive. The first warrior raised his sword. Before he could reach, Lyra, Cale moved. He did not transform. He did not roar. He simply stepped forward with breathtaking speed. His blade flashed once through the winter light. The attack ended before the soldier even realized what had happened. The remaining warriors froze. Every movement Cale made carried the precision of someone who had survived countless wars. His face remained calm. His breathing never changed. One by one the attackers fell back. Whispers spread among them. It cannot be. The Alpha King lives. Those words rolled across the battlefield faster than the wind. More soldiers began lowering their weapons. Others stared in disbelief. The legend they believed had died 7 years earlier now stood before them, wearing no crown, yet carrying the authority of a true ruler. Far across the village, Alpha Rowan heard the whispers. He pulled sharply on his horse and looked toward the center of the battle. When his eyes found Cale, the color slowly drained from his face. For several silent moments he could not move. Then he whispered to himself. It was true. He never died. Selena rode beside him. Do not let his tricks fool you. Kill them both before the soldiers lose their nerve. Rowan barely heard her. His attention had shifted toward Lyra. She no longer looked like the broken Omega he had abandoned beneath the moonstone. She stood beside Cale with quiet confidence. The frightened sadness that once filled her eyes had disappeared. For the first time Rowan realized how much he had truly lost. He urged his horse forward until only a few steps separated them. The battle around them slowly quieted. Even the soldiers sensed something important was about to happen. Snow continued falling between them. Soft, silent, Rowan climbed down from his horse. His voice was lower than Lyra had ever heard before. Lyra. She did not answer. He took another step. I searched for you. When I learned the truth, I came to bring you home. A faint smile crossed Lyra's face. There was no happiness in it, only disbelief. Home. She spoke the word, quietly. The place where you rejected me before hundreds of wolves. The place where my own family feared speaking to me. The place where you watched me walk into a blizzard knowing I would die. That home. Every sentence struck Rowan harder than any weapon. His shoulders lowered. I know what I did. There are no words that can erase it. I was deceived. Selena told me your blood carried an ancient curse. The council confirmed it. I believe them. Lyra looked at him steadily. You believed them because it was easier than believing me. Rowan lowered his eyes. She was right. There was no defense. No excuse. Only regret. He slowly removed the alpha crest from his cloak and placed it upon the snow between them. I cannot change the past. But if my life is the price for your forgiveness, then I will give it freely. The battlefield fell completely silent. Even Cale watched without speaking. Rowan dropped to one knee before Lyra. The proud alpha, who had once rejected her before an entire kingdom, now bowed his head before the same woman. Please forgive me. His voice broke. Not because I deserve it, Because I cannot live with what I have done." Tears filled several villagers' eyes. Many had never imagined they would witness such a moment. Lyra looked down at the kneeling Alpha. She remembered every painful step through the blizzard, every lonely tear, every heartbeat she believed would be her last. She remembered the silence of her parents, the laughter of the crowd, the warmth of the giant black wolf who had expected nothing in return. She gently shook her head. Rowan looked up. Her voice remained calm. "Forgiveness is not something you can earn by kneeling. It begins when the person who was hurt no longer carries hatred. I do not hate you anymore." Hope appeared inside Rowan's eyes. Then Lyra continued, "But I will never belong to you again." Those words ended every dream he still carried. His shoulders fell. He closed his eyes. He finally understood. Some wounds healed. Others simply became part of who a person was. At that moment, Selena's furious voice shattered the silence. "Enough!" She rode forward, surrounded by dozens of loyal guards. Her beautiful face twisted with rage. "Fools! Every one of you! Have you forgotten who rules these kingdoms?" She pointed directly toward Lyra. "That woman is a fraud. The council sentenced her family years ago. She deserves death." Several soldiers looked uncertain. Others glanced toward Rowan. No one moved. Selena's anger grew. She reached beneath her cloak and pulled out a sealed scroll marked with the royal seal. "Then hear the command of the royal council. Lyra Mooncrest is declared an enemy of every pack. Anyone protecting her will be executed for treason." She unrolled the scroll for everyone to see. Before she could continue, an old voice rose from behind the gathered crowd. "Then perhaps it is time the kingdom finally learns who committed the true treason." Every head turned. An elderly man wearing dark blue robes slowly stepped into the open square. His long silver beard moved gently in the wind. The villagers immediately bowed. Even Kale lowered his head with quiet respect. Lyra frowned. She had never seen the man before. Rowan stared at him in complete shock. Elder Magnus, the oldest member of the royal council, had arrived. But he was not standing beside Selena. He was standing beside Lyra. Magnus lifted a weathered leather book high above his head. His voice echoed across the valley. 20 years of lies end today. Inside this book are the original royal records, the names of every conspirator, every false judgment, every murdered heir, and the name of the wolf who ordered the massacre of the Moon royal family. Selena's face turned completely pale. She took one terrified step backward. For the first time since the story began, the woman who had controlled everyone else looked afraid, because she knew the truth was finally walking toward the light. Silence settled over the battlefield, so completely that even the falling snow seemed to stop in the air. Hundreds of warriors stood frozen where they were. Swords remained raised, yet no one moved. Every eye rested on the weathered book held high in Elder Magnus' hands. The old leather cover looked ordinary. There were no jewels, no gold, no royal decoration. Yet everyone understood that the greatest weapon in the valley was no longer a sword. It was the truth. Elder Magnus slowly walked toward the center of the open square. His footsteps left deep marks in the fresh snow. He looked neither frightened nor angry. His calm carried the weight of a man who had spent 2 decades waiting for the single moment. Selena forced herself to laugh. You expect anyone to believe the words of an old man hiding behind stories. Magnus looked at her without hatred. Not stories, records. The first records written before blood stained the throne. He carefully opened the ancient book. Its pages had yellowed with age, but every line remained clear. The names of kings, the names of queens, the names of every child born into the Moon royal bloodline. He turned another page, then another, until he stopped. His eyes slowly lifted toward the gathered army. 20 years ago, King Alaric and Queen Eloan were accused of betraying the kingdoms. That accusation was false. A wave of whispers spread through the crowd. Magnus continued. The royal council forged evidence. False witnesses were paid. Honest wolves were silenced. Entire families disappeared because they refused to repeat those lies. Several older warriors lowered their heads. They remembered those years. They remembered neighbors who had vanished without explanation. Magnus closed the book for a brief moment. Then he looked directly at Lyra. Your parents died protecting their people. Their final command was simple. Save our daughter. The words struck Lyra with unexpected force. She had imagined this moment many times since learning the truth. She thought hearing about her real parents would make her stronger. Instead, tears quietly slipped down her face. She never had the chance to know them. Yet every sacrifice around her suddenly carried their names. Cale slowly stepped beside her. He did not speak. His silent presence was enough. Lyra gently wiped away her tears. For the first time, she did not cry because she felt abandoned. She cried because she finally understood how deeply she had always been loved. Across the square, Rowan remained on one knee. His eyes never left Lyra. Every new truth became another reminder of the terrible mistake he had made. He looked toward Selena. His voice had lost every trace of uncertainty. "Did you know?" Selena met his gaze. For a brief second she said nothing. Then a slow smile appeared across her face. "Yes." The answer shocked the entire valley. She stepped forward proudly. "I knew from the beginning. I knew exactly who Lyra was. I also knew you would reject her if I convinced you she carried cursed blood." Rowan stared at her in disbelief. "You destroyed innocent lives. For power." Selena laughed softly. "Power is never given. It is taken. You were simply useful." Every word shattered the last pieces of Rowan's trust. He finally understood that the woman standing before him had never loved him. She had only needed his name, his strength, his army, nothing more. Selena slowly looked toward the soldiers surrounding the square. "Why are you all standing there? Kill them. Kill Magnus. Kill Lyra. Finish what should have been finished 20 years ago." No one moved. The soldiers looked at one another. Many quietly lowered their weapons. The fear that had once controlled them had begun to disappear. Truth had broken something inside the army. It had broken obedience. Selena's beautiful face twisted with anger. "Cowards!" She suddenly pulled a silver dagger from beneath her cloak and rushed toward Magnus. The old man never stepped back. Before the blade could reach him, Lyra moved. She crossed the distance in a heartbeat. The silver sword Cale had given her met Selena's dagger with a sharp clash that echoed across the valley. For several seconds, neither woman spoke. Their eyes locked. Selena's voice became cold. "You should have died in the snow." Lyra answered without raising her voice. "You made one mistake. You believed kindness was weakness." She pushed forward. Selena stumbled backward across the snow. Shock filled her face. The frightened Omega she had mocked before the entire kingdom no longer existed. Standing before her now was a woman who had survived betrayal, loneliness, death, and truth. Cale watched quietly. Pride shone in his eyes. She no longer needed someone to save her. She had learned to stand on her own. Selena screamed in frustration. "Archers! Loose your arrows!" A line of hidden archers appeared along the rooftops. Dozens of arrows shot toward the square. Everything happened at once. Cale leaped in front of Lyra. Rowan threw himself toward Magnus. Villagers raised shields over frightened children. The sky darkened beneath flying arrows. Cale transformed in midair. His massive black wolf form appeared once again with breathtaking speed. Several arrows struck his thick fur. Most shattered against the powerful muscles beneath. Others buried themselves painfully along his shoulder. He landed between Lyra and the attack with a roar so powerful that horses reared in panic. The sound rolled across the valley like thunder. Many enemy wolves instinctively lowered themselves. They remembered. This was the voice of the Alpha King. The true king. Not because of his crown. Because every instinct recognized his authority. Seeing the enormous black wolf standing beside Lyra changed everything. One by one soldiers dropped their swords into the snow. Others removed the black banners of the royal council from their armor. The army was no longer fighting for Selena. It was leaving her. Selena slowly turned in disbelief. "No, you belong to me." No one answered. She looked toward Rowan. He quietly walked away from her. She looked toward the council guards. Half had already surrendered. The others had disappeared into the forest. For the first time in her life, Selena stood completely alone. Desperation replaced arrogance. She backed away across the square until her shoulders touched the frozen fountain. Her eyes searched wildly for escape. Then they stopped on Lyra. Hatred filled them. "If I cannot rule this kingdom, neither will you." With a desperate cry, Selena pulled a small black horn from her belt and blew into it. Its deep sound echoed through the surrounding mountains. Nothing happened. For one long heartbeat, the valley remained still. Then the ground began to shake. Snow slid from the towering cliffs. Birds exploded into the sky. A distant roar rolled across the mountains. Not the voice of a wolf. Something much larger. Every face turned toward the northern ridge. Dark shapes emerged through the swirling snow. Dozens of enormous armored wolves descended from the mountains in perfect formation. Each carried the ancient crest of the Moon Royal Guard across polished silver armor. At their head rode a tall warrior wearing a white cloak stained by years of battle. He stopped before Kale, then bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, we have returned." Hope swept through the valley, but Elder Magnus looked beyond the arriving army toward the highest mountain peak. His calm expression slowly disappeared, because hidden above everyone else stood a single figure wrapped in black robes. Watching, waiting. The true architect behind the massacre had finally revealed himself, and he had no intention of surrendering without one last war. A bitter wind swept across the mountain valley as every eye turned toward the highest ridge. The figure dressed in black remained perfectly still against the white snow. His long cloak flowed behind him like a shadow stretching across the mountains. No fear touched his face. No panic crossed his eyes. He watched the battlefield with the calm confidence of a man who believed he had already won long before anyone else realized the game had begun. The newly arrived Moon Royal Guard immediately formed a protective circle around Lyra and Kale. Their silver armor reflected the winter light, while their wolves stood alert beside them. The villagers slowly moved behind the guards, carrying the wounded to safety. What had begun as a desperate struggle for survival had become something far greater. It had become the final battle for the future of every werewolf kingdom. The man in black slowly raised one hand. The snow around him began sliding down the mountainside. Hidden warriors emerged from caves carved deep into the cliffs. They wore dark armor without any crest or royal colors. Their loyalty belonged to only one person. The man removed his hood. An older face appeared beneath it. His hair had turned silver with age, but his sharp eyes remained cold. A deep silence spread through the valley. Even Elder Magnus lowered his head. Council Master Varric. The name passed from soldier to soldier until everyone understood who stood before them. For 20 years, Varric had ruled the Royal Council from the shadows. Every false trial, every secret execution, every missing heir, every broken alliance had carried his unseen hand. Varric smiled as if he welcomed the attention. At last, no more masks, no more hidden games. He slowly walked down the mountain path until he stood facing the gathered army. His voice remained calm. King Alaric believed kindness could unite wolves. Queen Eloan believed justice could replace fear. Both were fools. Kingdoms survive because powerful rulers make difficult choices. I simply made mine first. Lyra stepped forward before anyone else could answer. "You murdered children." Varric looked directly into her eyes. Children grow into kings and queens. Leaving heirs alive would have been foolish. His honesty chilled the entire valley. There was no regret inside him, only pride. Kale moved beside Lyra. His voice remained steady. "Your reign ends today." Varric laughed quietly. "Does it?" He slowly raised a small silver medallion hanging around his neck. The symbol matched the one carved inside the hidden mountain cabin. Magnus looked horrified. "Where did you get that?" Varric smiled. "From your king. The night he died." Kale's expression hardened. "You lie." Varric slowly shook his head. "No. Your king begged me to spare his daughter. I refused. You simply escaped before my soldiers reached the child." Lyra noticed Kale's hand slowly tightening around the hilt of his sword. The memory still haunted him. For 7 years, he had carried the weight of believing he had failed as king. Varric stepped closer. "Tell me, Kale, how many nights have you wondered whether you could have saved them all? How many times have you blamed yourself?" Kale remained silent. That silence answered everything. Lyra gently touched his arm. She looked into his amber eyes. "You kept your promise. Because of you I lived. You did not fail. You saved the future." For the first time the burden inside Kale's eyes seemed to grow lighter. He nodded once, then looked back toward Varric. "This ends now." The battle erupted without another word. The Moon Royal Guard charged across the valley, while Varric's hidden warriors rushed down from the cliffs. Steel flashed beneath the falling snow. Wolves leaped through the air. The frozen lake echoed with the sounds of battle. Lyra fought beside Kale instead of hiding behind him. Every lesson he had begun teaching her came alive through instinct and determination. She moved with confidence, not because she sought revenge, because innocent people still stood behind her. Across the battlefield, Rowan defended villagers from attacking soldiers. Several times enemy warriors attempted to strike Lyra from behind. Each time Rowan intercepted them without hesitation. He expected no praise, no forgiveness. Protecting her had become the only way he knew to face the guilt inside his heart. Meanwhile, Selena attempted to escape during the chaos. She slipped toward the northern forest, believing no one had noticed. Elder Magnus quietly stepped into her path. The old man blocked the narrow trail with nothing but his walking staff. Selena laughed bitterly. "Move. You cannot stop me." Magnus looked at her with sadness rather than anger. "Power blinded you long before ambition did. Your punishment is not death. It is living long enough to remember every innocent soul you betrayed." Royal guards surrounded her from every direction. This time she had nowhere left to run. At the center of the battlefield, Kale finally reached Varek. The two men circled each other across the frozen snow. Neither spoke. Words had already lost their purpose. Their swords met with a sharp clash that echoed through the mountains. Varek remained surprisingly fast despite his age. Every strike carried years of ruthless experience. Kale answered each attack with calm precision. Neither man gained an advantage. Then Varek suddenly smiled. He glanced past Kale. "Lyra." Kale instinctively looked toward her. That single heartbeat became Varek's opportunity. His blade drove forward. Before it could strike, Rowan threw himself between them. The sword pierced Rowan's side. He staggered but remained standing. Kale immediately disarmed Varek with one powerful strike. The old council master fell to his knees. Royal guards surrounded him instantly. The battle ended. Snow drifted quietly through the silent valley. Kale rushed toward Rowan. Lyra knelt beside him. Blood stained the white ground beneath his cloak. Rowan managed a weak smile. "Looks like I finally protected you." Lyra held his hand. "You did." He looked at Kale. "Take care of her. She deserves a king better than the elf I became." Kale nodded with quiet respect. "You have my word." Rowan closed his eyes. His breathing slowed. He had spent too long carrying pride. He left the world carrying peace instead. Many warriors lowered their heads. Even those who had once followed him mourned the man who finally chose honor over power. Days later, the kingdoms gathered beneath the ancient moonstone, where Lyra's life had once been shattered. The same snow-covered clearing now looked completely different. Thousands of wolves filled the valley, not to witness rejection, but to witness restoration. Elder Magnus placed the moon crown gently upon Lyra's head. The silver seemed to glow beneath the winter sun. He raised his voice so every kingdom could hear. Today the moon royal bloodline returns. Not through conquest, not through fear, but through truth. The valley erupted with cheers. Kale stood beside Lyra, wearing the royal cloak he had abandoned years earlier. When their eyes met, neither needed words. Their journey had begun with silence beneath a deadly blizzard. Now it ended beneath open skies with an entire kingdom standing beside them. Lyra looked across the crowd. She saw villagers who had become family, warriors who had chosen justice over blind loyalty, children laughing without fear. For the first time in many years, hope felt stronger than grief. As the celebration continued, Elder Magnus quietly approached Lyra and placed a small wooden box into her hands. She opened it slowly. Inside rested a delicate silver bracelet wrapped around a folded letter written in her mother's handwriting. Lyra's eyes filled with tears before she unfolded the worn parchment. The first line stole her breath. "My beloved daughter, if you are reading this, then the kingdom has finally found its way back to you." At that moment, Lyra gently rested one hand against her heart. Then she looked toward Kale. A quiet smile appeared on her face. The story that had begun with rejection in the snow had not truly been about losing a mate. It had been about finding her family, her purpose, her kingdom, and the love that had protected her long before she ever knew his name.